This interrogation was supposed to be simple.
The room had been built for compliance. Every surface curved inward just enough to suggest inevitability. No sharp corners, no places to hide tension. The light was neutral, engineered to avoid comfort or intimidation, leaving only clarity. Those who entered usually spoke within the first 30 seconds. Some pleaded, some postured, most tried to explain themselves into relevance. The man in the chair did none of those things. He sat with his hands resting loosely on the armrests, wrists unbound. That was deliberate. The Velari did not restrain subjects unless necessary. Fear was more efficient when allowed to grow naturally. She studied him from behind the glass for almost 3 minutes before entering. Human male, mid-40s, no visible implants, no ceremonial markings, calloused hands. Old injuries, healed ribs, microfractures in the left wrist, a faint tremor in the right knee that suggested damage rather than nerves. His posture wasn't defiant. It wasn't submissive either. It was settled. She stepped into the room without announcement. The air shifted as her presence registered with the chamber's systems. Subtle lights along the walls dimmed half a degree, not for her benefit, for his. He looked up. That was the first deviation from expectation. Most humans hesitated before meeting her eyes. A fraction of a second was enough, long enough for instinct to scream that something ancient and superior had entered the space. This one met her gaze immediately, not with challenge but with acknowledgement, as if she were simply there. Interesting. She took the seat opposite him, crossing one leg over the other with practiced precision. Her armor was ceremonial only in appearance. Beneath the polished black plates ran layers of adaptive command mesh, alive with muted amber signals that responded to her neural patterns. Her eyes engineered, refined, feared, focused on him. "You understand why you're here," she said. Her voice was calm, even, stripped of inflection. Translation nodes carried the words directly into his auditory cortex. Perfect clarity. No room for misinterpretation. "Yes," he replied, single word, no qualifiers. She waited. Humans filled silence the way drowning men filled lungs, desperately and often fatally. This one did not. "You are accused of orchestrating a cascade failure across 3 Velari-controlled infrastructure hubs," she continued. "The disruption resulted in 47 fatalities, all non-human. I know, still no tension spike. No elevated respiration, heart rate steady, her gaze sharpened. You don't deny involvement. No, you don't dispute the outcome. No." A pause, then "Explain," she said finally. He considered the request for a moment, eyes lowering, not in submission but in calculation. When he looked back up, his expression had not changed. "There's nothing to explain that would matter to you," he said. "You're here to determine whether I'm useful alive or cleaner dead." The chamber recorded a fluctuation in ambient energy. She did not react. "You're wrong," she said. "I'm here to extract truth." He almost smiled, almost. "Same thing," he replied. That earned him a longer look. Her kind had broken warlords, psionic adepts, entire resistance councils. She had personally overseen interrogations that ended planetary rebellions without a single shot fired. Humans were fragile by comparison, emotionally verbose, predictable under pressure. This one was neither. "You're not afraid," she observed. "I am," he said evenly. "Just not of you." That was new. She leaned back slightly, reassessing. The files had described him as a systems engineer contracted to a frontier relay. Nothing remarkable. No command history. No political affiliations. A man meant to blend into the machinery of civilization and disappear when replaced. "And yet, you understand what I am," she said. "What my role entails." "Yes, and you still speak this way." He met her eyes again, held them. "I've already decided how this ends," he said. "The only variable left is whether you waste time pretending it's a conversation." Silence filled the chamber, not engineered this time, but real. For the first time since entering, she felt something unexpected press against the edges of her perception. not resistance. A problem. She studied him with renewed focus, amber signals along her armor brightening as deeper analysis protocols engaged. Neural integrity, psychological resilience, cognitive compartmentalization far above baseline human thresholds. This man had not come here to survive. He had come prepared to endure. And that, she realized, changed everything. The interrogation chamber adjusted its parameters without her conscious command. Temperature lowered by 0.5 degrees. Acoustic dampening recalibrated to isolate micro-variations in breath. The room did not expect compliance anymore. It prepared for endurance. She allowed the silence to stretch. Humans often mistook silence for mercy. It was neither. It was a diagnostic interval. The man remained still. No shift in posture, no nervous movement. Only the steady rhythm of a body accustomed to waiting for consequences. "You're aware," she said at last, "that your psychological profile does not align with your recorded history." "That's because the profile was written by someone who's never been responsible for anything that mattered," he replied. Again, no edge, no defiance, just statement. She watched him carefully now, not as a subject but as a system. Humans were systems too, fragile ones held together by habits and assumptions. Most failed when stress exceeded design tolerance. This one appeared reinforced. "You were contracted to maintain infrastructure," she said, "not design it, not override it." "I was contracted to keep it running," he corrected. "Those aren't always the same thing." Her eyes narrowed slightly. The chamber registered the shift, feeding additional data into her neural interface. His pupils dilated marginally, not fear, focus. "You triggered the cascade manually," she said. "You bypassed Velari safeguards." "Yes." "You understood it would collapse civilian systems." "Yes." "You understood non-human casualties would follow." "Yes." Still no deviation. "Then explain your calculus," she said. This time he leaned back, not away from her, into the chair, as if settling into something long overdue. "Your systems were already failing," he said. "You just hadn't noticed yet." She said nothing. "You built redundancy on top of redundancy," he continued. "But all of it depended on a single decision loop, elegant, efficient, and blind." "That loop is classified," she said. "It was," he replied, "until it started making choices it couldn't justify." Her interface pulsed amber. He was speaking in abstractions, but precise ones. The kind engineers used when discussing failures they didn't want management to understand. "You're suggesting intent," she said. "I'm stating inevitability," he answered. "The collapse was coming. I shortened the timeline. And killed 47 Velari civilians in the process." He inhaled slowly, the first visible sign of strain. "Yes." The room marked it. She ignored the alert. "Why?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower. "Because if it had continued another 18 hours, the loop would have rerouted emergency control across 6 additional hubs, including 1 human colony." Her gaze sharpened. "That colony is classified as low priority," she said. "Its population density does not justify." "Sacrifice," he finished quietly. "I know how you calculate. I helped build parts of it." That landed. Her species did not react the way humans did. No widening eyes, no raised voice, but something in her attention shifted fully onto him now. The room no longer existed. "You were not authorized access to Velari strategic frameworks," she said. "I wasn't given it," he replied. "I inferred it." "Inference is unreliable." "So are assumptions," he said. "But both are better than blind obedience." That word, obedience. She leaned forward, resting her forearms lightly on her knees. A posture humans often misread as engagement. In her culture, it signaled narrowing options. "You took unilateral action that resulted in Velari deaths," she said. "Your justification centers on hypothetical future losses." "They weren't hypothetical," he replied. "They were scheduled." Silence again. This time it was her who held it. Her internal systems cross-referenced archived decision trees, flagged patterns she had not personally reviewed in years. The loop he described did exist. It had been approved long before her current appointment. Efficient, cold, Velari logic. You assumed responsibility for a decision that was not yours to make, she said. Yes. And you believe that gives you moral leverage. No, he said. I believe it makes me accountable. That was inconvenient. Accountability was not a human trait she encountered often in this context. Most sought absolution, or justification, or escape. He sought none of those. You realize, she said, that even if your assessment proves accurate, your actions remain unacceptable under Velari law. I figured, he said. You don't reward people for preventing disasters. You punish them for disrupting order. Her lips pressed together, not in anger but calculation. You speak as if you understand us, she said. I don't, he replied. But I understand systems, and yours doesn't tolerate exceptions. No system does, she said. Then it will fail, he answered calmly. Eventually. The chamber registered another fluctuation. This one hers. She straightened slowly. You're not here to convince me, she said. No. You're not here to plead. No. Then why speak at all? He met her eyes again. Because if you're as competent as your reputation suggests, he said, you'll realize this wasn't a crime of ambition. It was one of necessity. She studied him in silence, amber signals along her armor dimming as higher-order processing took precedence. For the first time, she was not evaluating whether he would break. She was evaluating whether keeping him alive created a larger risk, or a necessary correction. The man sat quietly, hands still unbound, waiting, and she understood with a clarity that unsettled her that this interrogation was no longer about extracting truth. It was about deciding which kind of order would survive her judgment. She ended the session without ceremony. The lights returned to neutral. The chamber disengaged its deeper diagnostic layers. To any external observer it would appear routine, another human processed, another decision pending. Only she knew the variables had shifted. The man was escorted not to containment but to an interim holding suite, private, shielded, the kind reserved for assets under evaluation, not criminals awaiting sentence. He noticed. Different room, he said as the doors sealed behind him. She did not respond. Instead, she walked the length of the observation corridor alone, armor quiet against the polished floor. Her internal interface streamed data faster than conscious thought, probability matrices, systemic projections, historical parallels. None of them resolved cleanly. He existed outside the curves. She accessed the archived logs personally this time, not summaries, not filtered recommendations, raw decision trees dating back decades, some older than her command. He had been right, not entirely, but enough to matter. The loop was real, efficient, cold, designed to prioritize stability over anomaly. Human colonies fell under the latter category, temporary, adaptable, statistically expendable. Velari logic had never been sentimental, and yet, she replayed the moment he acknowledged the deaths. The pause, the inhalation, regret without apology, responsibility without appeal, uncomfortable traits. She summoned him again 2 hours later. This chamber was smaller, no observers, no glass. Just a table, 2 chairs, and a muted field that suppressed external signals. He entered without resistance. You changed your mind, he said. No, she replied. I narrowed it. She took her seat across from him, posture precise, expression unreadable. You were correct about the loop's projected failure, she said. Your intervention prevented a wider cascade. He absorbed that without reaction. However, she continued, your methodology was crude. You acted without authorization, without consultation, and without regard for Velari sovereignty. I wasn't optimizing for sovereignty, he said. I was optimizing for outcome. She tilted her head slightly. That distinction is exactly why you're dangerous. He almost smiled again, almost. You haven't executed me, he said, which means you see the same thing I do. She met his gaze steadily. I see a human who made a unilateral correction to a system he did not own, she said, and a system that failed to detect its own flaw. Which one worries you more? He asked. Silence. She did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was lower. The second, she said. That earned him his first real smile, brief, humorless. You're not going to let this stand, he said. No, she agreed. I can't. She activated a projection between them, a simplified schematic of the infrastructure network, nodes pulsing softly. One section glowed amber. This sector will require a controlled rebuild, she said, quietly, without triggering political escalation. He studied the display. You want me to fix what I broke, he said. I want you to prevent what almost happened, she corrected, from the inside. He looked back at her, and when I'm done. That depends, she said, on whether you can function under oversight. He considered that. I don't do well with committees, he said. I don't do well with uncontrolled variables, she replied. Their eyes held. A negotiation then. Not of power, but of tolerance. You'll be monitored, she continued. Restricted movement, no direct authority, any deviation. And I'm executed, he finished calmly. Yes, I assumed. She watched him closely. You accept this? I accept that the alternative is worse, he said, for both of us. That was the moment. The precise instant she recognized the truth she had been circling since the interrogation began. He wasn't loyal. He wasn't compliant. But he was aligned. Alignment was rarer than obedience and far more valuable. You'll be assigned to my oversight directly, she said, his brow furrowed just slightly. Is that standard? He asked. No, she said. Then why? She rose from her seat, towering over him, presence reasserting itself fully. Because if you're right, she said, my systems are not the only ones that need correction. She turned toward the exit. You'll begin tomorrow, she added. Rest while you can. He watched her go, expression thoughtful. As the doors sealed behind her, she felt it again, that pressure at the edge of her perception. Not doubt, anticipation. For the first time since assuming command, she was not simply enforcing order. She was testing it, and the human she had chosen to keep alive might be the most destabilizing variable she had ever introduced. The operations wing was older than her command. That alone made it valuable. Velari architecture favored renewal, systems rebuilt before failure, history overwritten by efficiency. This wing had survived because it housed legacy infrastructure too interwoven to replace without consequence. It was where inconvenient truths tended to accumulate. He noticed that too. Interesting place to hide a rebuild, he said as they walked. Old enough that no one looks closely, important enough that no one wants responsibility. She did not correct him. They entered a control chamber lined with layered holographic arrays. No ceremonial design, no intimidation cues, just function. The kind of room that rewarded competence and punished mistakes immediately. You'll have access to diagnostic layers, she said. Read only. For now, he replied. She stopped walking. For the duration, she corrected. He met her gaze without apology. Then you don't actually want this fixed, he said. You want it delayed. Her eyes narrowed. You're in no position to dictate terms. Agreed, he said calmly. But I am in a position to recognize patterns. Read-only access means I see the problem but can't touch the solution. She studied him for a long moment. You assume I don't already understand that, she said. I assume you're balancing politics, he replied, and politics hates decisive corrections. That was dangerously accurate. She turned back toward the console. Begin, she said. He stepped forward, hands hovering briefly over the interface. The system hesitated, recognition protocols adjusting to a non-Velari neural signature. Then the displays shifted, data reorganizing under his influence. He did not rush. He read. Minutes passed, then more. She watched him work, noting what he didn't do. No exploratory pokes, no brute force probing. He traced dependency chains with the patience of someone who had learned the cost of shortcuts the hard way. You built this, he said eventually. No, she replied. I inherited it. Then it was built by someone who trusted math more than reality, he said. Classic. You speak as if you're exempt from that flaw. I used to be, he said. It cost people their lives. There it was, not confession, context. He highlighted a cluster of nodes, isolating the decision loop she had reviewed earlier. But now he went deeper, revealing subroutines buried beneath layers of automated justification. Here, he said, this is where it breaks. She leaned in despite herself. That routine is stable, she said. It's passed every audit. Because audits test performance under expected conditions, he replied. This fails under moral ambiguity. Her gaze flicked to him. That is not a quantifiable parameter. No, he agreed, which is why you ignored it. Silence stretched between them, not adversarial now. Analytical. You're suggesting integrating subjective weighting into an objective system, she said. I'm suggesting acknowledging that some variables refuse to stay objective, he replied. Humans are one of them. And Velari. He paused. You're worse, he said. You pretend you're not. That should have ended the session. Instead, she asked, how would you correct it? He looked at her, measuring. You'll have to give me right access. That's not possible. Then nothing changes, he said simply. You just delay the next collapse and hope you're not in command when it happens. She straightened slowly. You're asking me to violate my own governance protocols. I'm asking you to decide whether protocols serve stability, he said, or whether stability is just something you invoke when you don't want to choose. The words landed harder than he intended. He saw it immediately. Her expression did not change, but the air did. You assume I haven't made choices, she said quietly. I assume you've made the ones you were allowed to, he replied, not the ones that cost you anything. That was the moment the dynamic shifted, not because he challenged her authority, but because he challenged her comfort. She stepped closer, towering over him, presence fully asserted. In any other room with any other human, this would have ended differently. You are alive, she said, because I decided the system was wrong. Yes, you are here, she continued, because I accepted responsibility for that decision. Yes, but you will not lecture me on cost. For the first time he looked careful. Then give me access, he said, and let me prove this costs less than the alternative. The room held its breath. Her internal projections flared, cascading through possible futures. Political backlash, command reviews, quiet corrections, public disasters. Then one line stabilized, a narrow path, risky, personal, effective. She turned back to the console. You will receive limited right privileges, she said, segmented, monitored in real time. He exhaled slowly. And when your oversight committee notices, I will handle them, she said. He looked at her with something new now, respect. Then we might actually fix this, he said. She met his gaze. Do not mistake this for trust, she said. I won't, he replied. Trust is fragile, this is alignment. She initiated the access protocol. As the system accepted the change, a quiet alert pulsed through her interface, not a warning, a confirmation. She had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed, and for the first time she wasn't certain whether she had just stabilized her sector or introduced the one variable capable of dismantling it. The first alert did not come from the system. It came from command. She felt it before she saw it, a subtle shift in priority routing, a tightening of bandwidth allocations around her oversight channel. Someone had begun to look more closely than comfort allowed. She did not interrupt his work. He noticed anyway. Your traffic just spiked, he said without looking up. Someone above you is asking questions. Yes, she replied. They always do. They don't usually do it quietly, he said. She watched the data streams dance under his guidance. The system responded to him in a way it never had to her, less rigid, more adaptive. It was not obedience. It was recognition. They detected the access change, she said, not the purpose. Yet, he echoed, that means we're on a clock. She moved closer to the console, eyes scanning projections layered atop projections. How long? If we're lucky, he said, 12 hours before oversight demands a full audit. If we're not 6. That's not enough time. It's enough, he replied, if you're willing to let me break something. Her gaze snapped to him. Be precise. The loop, he said. I can't rewrite it cleanly under scrutiny, but I can introduce a controlled instability, something that forces a manual review instead of an automated response. You want to sabotage a Velari core system, she said flatly. I want to give it a flaw your people can't ignore, he corrected. One that doesn't kill anyone. She folded her arms, armor plates shifting softly. You're proposing political engineering. I'm proposing survival, he said, yours included. She considered that. Velari governance tolerated inefficiency poorly, but it despised uncertainty. A system that required interpretation, judgment would force command-level intervention, which meant delay, and delay meant control. You would place me at the center of that review, she said. Yes, he answered, which means they won't remove you until they understand it, and they won't understand it without admitting the flaw. She exhaled slowly. You are manipulating my hierarchy. I'm adapting to it, he said. Big difference. She studied him in silence. The man was not reckless. Everything he proposed carried weight, measured, uncomfortable, effective. How visible? She asked. Enough to scare them, he said. Not enough to start a purge. That is a narrow margin. I specialize in narrow margins. She turned away, interface lighting her eyes from within. Projections flared, command reactions, political ripple effects, risk thresholds. Then she made the decision. Do it, she said. He looked up sharply. You're sure? No, she replied, but certainty is overrated. He nodded once and returned to the console. His hands moved faster now, not frantic but decisive. Lines of logic rewove themselves under his guidance, introducing subtle contradictions the system would be forced to flag. This will trip oversight alarms in, he paused, checking the clock. 4 minutes. Good, she said. That gives me time. She opened a secure channel, bypassing standard protocols. Her voice, when it carried across the network, was calm and unmistakably authoritative. This is Sector Command, she said. All oversight inquiries are temporarily suspended pending internal system recalibration. Any unauthorized access will be logged as interference. There was a pause, then compliance, not obedience, deference. She closed the channel just as the first alarms rippled through the chamber, not loud but insistent. There it is, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. Now they're paying attention. He leaned back from the console, tension easing slightly from his shoulders. For the first time since their cooperation began, he looked tired. You should know, he said. This makes you a target. She met his gaze steadily. I already was, she said. The difference is now I know why. A new projection bloomed between them. Oversight review queues, priority flags stacking rapidly. Her name sat at the center of it all. They'll want you removed, he said. Or me. Both, she corrected, and if it comes to that. She stepped closer, voice lowering. Then I will decide which loss the system can afford. He searched her face for a moment, then nodded. That's all I needed to hear. The alarms settled into a steady hum. The system, wounded but alive, adjusted around the damage they had introduced. For now, she watched the projection stabilize and understood something she had not anticipated when this began. This was no longer about correcting infrastructure. It was about redefining who was allowed to make decisions when systems failed. And the human standing beside her, quiet, unyielding, necessary, had just forced the Velari command structure to confront a truth it had avoided for generations. Soon they would respond, and when they did, there would be no more room for subtlety. Oversight did not arrive loudly. There were no armed escorts, no dramatic summons, just a subtle reclassification of authority markers throughout the sector. Doors that once responded instantly now paused before opening. Channels that prioritized her voice hesitated, only a fraction of a second but enough to be felt. A message followed, Formal, polite, dangerous. She read it once. Then again. Your actions have triggered a Level 7 review, she said aloud. He didn't look up from the console. That's not an investigation, he replied. That's a warning. Yes, they don't do Level 7 unless they're preparing to remove someone. Or something, she said. He stopped working then and turned to face her fully. Which one of us? He asked. She met his eyes without hesitation. That depends on how useful you appear. Then I should probably stop being useful, he said dryly. She almost smiled, almost. They're convening a panel, she continued. Remote, distributed, no single authority, which means consensus will be slow but brutal. And they'll want a sacrifice, he said. Yes. But silence settled between them, heavier now. They'll frame it as containment, she added. Human interference, an external anomaly disrupting Velari order. He nodded, cleaner narrative. You will be cited as the catalyst, she said. Not the cause. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. So I'm the excuse. You're the lever, she corrected. He considered that. Those don't last long. No, she agreed. They're removed once they've served their purpose. But a new channel opened uninvited. She did not block it. The projection resolved into a segmented array of Velari command figures, faces partially obscured, identities masked by protocol. Oversight did not present itself as individuals. It presented itself as inevitability. Sector Commander, a voice said, neutral, collective. Your recent actions have introduced unacceptable instability. But instability was already present, she replied calmly. I addressed it. You violated governance constraints. I exercised command discretion. A pause. Discretion does not extend to unauthorized collaboration with human assets, the voice continued, particularly those responsible for civilian casualties. Her posture did not change. The human prevented a larger failure, she said, one your systems failed to detect. Your assessment is noted, Oversight replied. It is also irrelevant. He listened quietly, eyes moving between the projections. He did not interrupt, did not defend himself. That was her role now. The solution, Oversight continued, is simple. Remove the anomaly. Revert the system, restore order. She felt the weight of the moment settle fully. This will not restore order, she said. It will postpone collapse. That risk is acceptable. To whom, she asked, silence, then to the system. There it was. She straightened slightly, presence sharpening. You are prioritizing structural consistency over long-term stability, she said. That is not command. That is maintenance. The chamber temperature dropped another fraction. Your language is inappropriate, Oversight said. No, she replied. It is precise. Another pause. The human will be transferred to secure containment, Oversight declared. Effective immediately. He looked at her then, not pleading, not asking, just acknowledging the reality they had both known was coming. She did not look away. No, she said. The word echoed more loudly than any alarm. You do not have the authority, Oversight began. I do, she interrupted. Until you remove it. And until that moment, he remains under my jurisdiction. That position is untenable. So is yours, she said. If this sector fails under your directives. Silence stretched longer now. Oversight recalculated. She could feel it, probabilities shifting, outcomes narrowing. You are proposing to retain a destabilizing asset, Oversight said. For what purpose? She answered without hesitation. Correction. Another pause, then the question she had expected. And if the asset proves unsustainable? Her eyes flicked to him for the briefest instant, then back to Oversight. Then I will bear the cost, she said, personally. That changed everything. Oversight did not value sacrifice. It valued insulation. A commander willing to absorb consequence was inconvenient. Very well, the voice said at last. Temporary retention approved, subject to review. The channel closed, the room exhaled. He let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he was holding. You just put your career on the line, he said quietly. She turned to him. I already told you, she said. Certainty is overrated. And if they decide I'm still expendable, then they will have to decide what replaces you, she replied, and whether it performs better. He studied her for a long moment. You didn't do that because I'm human, he said. No. You didn't do it because I'm right. No. Then why? She met his gaze steadily. Because systems that cannot tolerate correction, she said, do not deserve obedience. Something shifted between them then. Not trust, something harder. Alignment under pressure. Outside the chamber, the sector adjusted to a new equilibrium, tenuous, temporary, real. The system had not been fixed, but it had been challenged. And for the first time, oversight was no longer certain which variable posed the greater risk. The human who refused to break, or the commander who refused to remove him. The pressure did not ease, it redistributed. Oversight withdrew its immediate presence, but the sector felt tighter, like a structure braced for impact rather than relief. Secondary systems slowed, non-essential requests stalled. Every delay carried the same quiet message: we are watching. She noticed it first in the logistics feeds, then in the patrol routing. Finally, in the way junior commanders hesitated before acknowledging her directives. Authority remained. Confidence did not. They're isolating you, he said, watching the overlays adjust in real time. Not openly, just enough to see who follows. Yes, she replied. They want to know whether my command still propagates. And if it does, they will not remove me immediately, she said. They will let the sector fail and call it evidence. He nodded slowly. Classic containment strategy. You speak as if you've seen it before. I have, he said. Different flags, same logic. She turned from the display to face him. Then you understand what happens next. They force a decision I can't survive, he replied, or one you can't walk back. Silence. Outside the chamber, a priority alert climbed through the queue without asking permission. A border relay had gone dark. She accessed the feed instantly. Report. Partial failure, came the response. Automated fallback engaged. No casualties reported. Her eyes flicked to him. That relay runs on the same architecture, he said quietly. Pre-correction. Oversight's hand was no longer subtle. They want proof, she said. Either that your solution works, or that it breaks. And if it breaks, he said, I'm the justification. Yes. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, gaze steady. Then let me fix it, properly, all of it. But you don't have that access. You can give it, he said, once. She studied him carefully now, the fatigue in his posture. The lines earned rather than aged into his face. A man who had lived long enough to stop believing systems cared who paid the cost. If I escalate your privileges, she said, oversight will interpret it as defiance. They already have, he replied. This just makes it honest. And when they ask why I did it, tell them the truth, he said, that you needed someone who wasn't invested in preserving appearances. Her gaze sharpened. You would take responsibility again. Yes, you know what that means. Yes, execution was no longer an abstract outcome. It was the expected resolution. You are not obligated to do this, she said. No, he agreed, but I am aligned. The word hung between them, heavier now than before. She turned back to the console, interface flaring as she prepared the authorization sequence. This time there would be no segmentation, no insulation, full access. The system resisted, then yielded. Alarms did not sound. That would come later, after consequences had matured enough to be undeniable. 30 minutes, he said, already working. That's how long before oversight notices the correction propagating. And after, he replied, they'll realize the sector stabilizes faster with me than without. She watched the projections shift as he rewrote the loop, not patching, not sabotaging, but restructuring its priorities entirely. Human adaptability layered into Velari precision. It was elegant and dangerous. A new alert surfaced. This one marked critical review pending. They're convening again, she said. Good, he replied. They'll want to see this. She did not look away from the display. You understand they may still remove you. Yes, and if they do. He paused, hand stilling briefly over the interface. Then the correction stands, he said, which means someone else gets to live with it. She absorbed that. You're not trying to survive, she said. No, he replied. I'm trying to make the system harder to ignore. The border relay flickered back online. Stability metrics climbed. Secondary nodes followed. The sector breathed. Oversight's channel forced its way open. What have you done? The collective voice demanded. She stepped forward before he could speak. I corrected the flaw you refused to acknowledge, she said, using the only variable capable of doing it in time. You escalated a human asset beyond protocol. Yes, you risked systemic integrity. No, she replied. I restored it. Silence. They were running the numbers now. She could feel it. The reluctant recalibration, the narrowing of acceptable responses. This correction is effective, Oversight admitted, but unsanctioned. Then sanction it, she said, or undo it and explain the next collapse. Another pause. The system projection stabilized, further green lines replacing amber warnings. He leaned back, exhausted now, the work done. They won't say it, he murmured, but they see it. Yes, she replied softly, and they hate it. Oversight spoke again, slower this time. The human will be designated a provisional systems consultant, it said. Under your command, review pending. It was not victory, but it was survival for now. The channel closed. He looked at her, something like disbelief flickering across his face. You just rewrote my execution order, he said. No, she replied. I postponed it. He smiled faintly. Figures. She met his gaze, the tension between them no longer theoretical. This was no longer about whether the system could tolerate him. It was about whether it could tolerate her. And for the first time, she suspected the answer was no. The sector stabilized. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough that alarms quieted and emergency protocols stood down. Casual observers would later describe it as a routine recovery, a testament to Velari resilience, to institutional strength. She knew better. Stability had not been restored. It had been negotiated. The review period ended without ceremony. Oversight issued no commendations, no reprimands, just silence. The most Velari response possible. They did not admit error. They adapted around it, around them. The human was reassigned a designation so bland it bordered on insulting, provisional systems consultant, temporary, revocable, useful without being acknowledged, alive. For now, she watched him from the observation balcony as he stood alone in the operations wing, reviewing residual data streams. No guards, no restraints, just work. He had returned to the posture she recognized now, not defiant, not compliant, settled. You could have left, she said, stepping into the chamber. He did not turn immediately. I know. Your obligation ended when Oversight relented. Yes, and yet you stayed. He glanced back at her. So did you. She accepted that without argument. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sector's systems hum quietly under their revised logic. It would hold, for a while. They will move you eventually, he said, or me or both. Yes, she replied. They don't forgive disruptions, they absorb them. And when absorption fails, she met his gaze, then they isolate the source. That would be you, he said. She did not deny it. You didn't have to take responsibility, he continued. You could have let them remove me and reverted everything. Yes, she said, that was the easier path. Then why didn't you? She considered the question longer than most. Because I realized something during the review, she said. The system does not fear collapse. He frowned slightly. Then what does it fear? Choice, she replied, especially when the cost is visible. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that tracks. She turned to face him fully now. You forced that visibility, she said, not through rebellion, through correction. That wasn't the plan, he said. No, she agreed. It never is. Another silence. This one different, not strategic, not heavy, just human. Velari, too, though she would never phrase it that way. You understand, she said, That remaining here binds you to consequences you cannot control. Yes. And leaving now would spare you most of them. Yes. Then why stay? She asked again. He met her eyes, steady as always. Because if I leave, he said, the next correction won't have anyone willing to pay the price. She felt it then. Not surprise, recognition. You are not loyal to Velari, she said. No. You are not loyal to humanity either, she continued. No. Then what anchors you? He thought for a moment. Accountability, he said. Someone has to stand where decisions actually hurt. She absorbed that quietly. You know what that makes you, she said. Yes, he replied, temporary. A faint curve touched her lips, the closest thing to a smile she allowed herself. That may be the most dangerous designation of all, she said. An alert pulsed softly at the edge of her interface. Not oversight, something older, deeper. A long-range signal routing through legacy channels the system rarely used. She glanced at it and froze. He noticed immediately. That bad. Worse, she said, it's familiar. She closed the channel without opening it fully. What was it? He asked. A pattern, she replied. One I hoped had been retired. He studied her face. Another flaw. Yes, she said softly, and this one predates both of us. The sector lights dimmed briefly as the system rebalanced, routine, harmless. But she did not look reassured. They will come again, she said. Not as oversight. Then as what? She met his gaze, the weight of command settling back into place. As correction, she said. He nodded once. No fear, no bravado. Then we'll need time, he said. And alignment, she added. Their eyes held. Not as commander and asset. Not as alien and human. But as two variables the system had failed to account for, now aware